Hi everyone, and welcome to the Lectec Electric Skateboard Assembly tutorial. I'm Jared, and today I'll be walking you through putting together your new electric skateboard step by step. You've got your Lectec box here, and inside you'll find everything you need to build your board. But before we dive in, let me share some important tips that'll make this assembly as easy as possible. First thing, keep all of the parts and tools inside the box as we go through the assembly. Only take out what you need for each step. That'll help keep things organized and prevent parts from getting lost. Tip 2. You'll want to do this on a large flat surface, like your dining room table. Keep your workspace clean because some of these parts are small and can roll away if dropped. The whole build can be done in one sitting, which typically takes about 2 to 3 hours. But you don't have to rush through it. Feel free to take breaks, and you can always split it up and pick back up where you left off. For this video and any other guides you might need, head over to learn.lectec.com. which is your hub for all things Lectec. Before we start building, let's take a closer look at the tools included in your kit. You've got a 3mm Allen screwdriver, a 6 to 7mm spanner wrench, and this T-tool here. I'll let you know when it's time to use each one. There are only 3 tools that you need for the entire assembly. Do not use any electric drills or other tools. One last thing before we begin. Take your time with each step. Double check your work before moving on. It's always easier to catch something early than to backtrack later. All right, let's build your Lectec electric skateboard. To kick things off, you're going to gather the black T-tool. And just so you know that this has 3 sides on it, and each of them are all different sizes. So you need to use the right side for the base plate when we get to that later. You also gather the front hanger, and you can tell that this is the front because it doesn't have a circular motor mount on one of the sides. You'll also gather one of the base plates. You'll then remove the lock nut from the base plate. You can either do this by hand if you can, or using the black T-tool. Once that's off, you can slide one of the blue bushings and silver washers off of the threads. Then we're going to install the hanger onto the base plate. The hanger has 2 sides, and one of them has a triangle. You're going to make sure that the triangle faces outward. To get started, you'll put the rounded part of the hanger into the red pivot cup on the base plate and slide these threads through the hole in the hanger. You'll use a little bit of force here and kind of push it down, and you'll feel it snap into place. After that, you can slide the blue bushing back onto the threads and push it down until the threads are visible on the other side of the washer. Then you can secure everything with the lock nut, and just do this by hand to get it started until it doesn't spin anymore. Then you can tighten everything down with the T-tool until the threads are flush with the edge of the lock nut. Gather 2 wheels, the front truck assembly, the black T-tool, and as a little bonus, the 3mm Allen screwdriver, which is located under the rear truck. You're going to use the black T-tool to remove the lock nut from one side of the truck. Once that's off, you can slide one of the silver washers off of the axle and ensure that one of the silver washers is still on the axle. Then we're going to slide the wheels on. I'm going to grab the front truck and turn it on its side like this, and then slide the wheel onto the axle as shown. You'll notice that it may not go in right away, and this is where we'll use the 3mm Allen screwdriver. So we need to push the little spacer that's between the bearings to the center. So I'm just going to put this in, wiggle it around, and you'll see it slides right down. Then to tighten everything back down, we're going to slide the silver washer back onto the threads, and then hand tighten the lock nut. Once you can't spin it anymore, then you can grab your T-tool and tighten it down. I'm going to continue doing this until it doesn't turn anymore. You don't need to use too much force here. Then we're going to use the T-tool to loosen the lock nut by about 1/4 of a turn. Just like that. Now we can see that the wheel will spin completely free and have no resistance. Now we just need to repeat the same process on the other side of the truck to install the other wheel. So to get started, I'll either hand spin the lock nut off of the axle or use the T-tool. Remove one of the silver washers. Make sure that one silver washer is still on the axle. We're going to turn the truck so that the wheel faces down. Install the wheel with the logo facing outwards. You'll see it won't sit down all the way, so I'll use the little 3mm Allen screwdriver to make that sit down. Once that's on, I'm going to install the silver washer back onto the threads and then tighten the lock nut with my hand. Once it doesn't spin anymore, I'll tighten everything down with the T-tool. And then when it doesn't spin anymore, we'll do the same 1/4 turn to the left to loosen it up. And now you can see that the wheel spins pretty free. Awesome job! We have now completely assembled the front truck. Now we're going to assemble the rear truck. So you need to gather one base plate, the rear truck, which has the circular motor mount, and your T-tool. We'll do the same process that we did for the front truck and start by removing the lock nut on the end of the threads. You can either do this by hand or using the T-tool. Once that's off, we're going to remove one of the blue bushings and silver washers. Then we're going to install the hanger with the triangle facing outward into the base plate. We'll do so by pushing the rounded part of the hanger into the red pivot cup and pushing down until it locks into place. We'll then put the blue bushing back onto the threads and make sure that a little bit is pushing out, and secure everything by hand tightening the lock nut. To tighten everything up, we'll just use the T-tool until the threads are flush with the lock nut. Gather one wheel, the rear truck assembly, your T-tool, and the 3mm Allen screwdriver. You'll notice that there are two sides to the rear truck. One has the motor mount and one does not. For now, we're going to install the blue wheel on the side without the motor mount. So to get started, I'm going to use the T-tool to remove the lock nut from the axle, slide one of the silver washers off, and ensure that one silver washer is still on the axle. We'll tilt it down to put the wheel on, ensure that the logo is facing outwards, and then use the 3mm Allen screwdriver just to move the spacer out of the way. We'll then put the silver washer back onto the axle and hand tighten the lock nut. Then tighten everything down with the T-tool. Once it doesn't spin anymore, we're just going to turn it back a quarter of a turn. And then you can notice that the wheel spins free. Place the motor exactly as you see here, and then you're going to take the motor and place it behind the motor mount. Angle the cable about 45 degrees up, just like this, and you're going to slide it on as seen. Then when you flip it over, you'll be able to attach the 4 screws to the holes. I'm going to align the blue motor mount with the hole in the very top right here and place one of the screws through the motor mount and into the threads in the motor. I'll hand tighten the screw until it doesn't turn anymore, and then I'll grab another screw and place it in the very bottom hole. You'll need to align the motor so that you see the threads. I'll hand tighten this as well. And now is a really good time to double check the orientation. Make sure it is exactly as you see here. To finish it off, I'll add the other 2 screws to the left and right side. Once everything is hand tight, you can use the 3mm Allen screwdriver to tighten everything down. But important thing to note here is that the motor mount still needs to be able to move left and right. So you're going to tighten these, but not completely all the way. Leave 1 to 2 millimeters of space per bolt. When I'm done, I'm just going to double check that this still slides, and it does, so we're good to go. We're going to gather the pulley bag, the Allen screwdriver, and the motor mount assembly. Remove the motor pulley, the screw, and the washer from the bag. You'll notice that the motor pulley has a hole in the center shaped like a D. This exactly matches the motor shaft, which is also shaped like a D. You'll need to align the tube flat spots and then slide the motor pulley onto the motor shaft and ensure that the flat part faces the blue motor mount. Once you slide that on, it's good to go. The wrong way is to do it with it out, like this. This is incorrect. Once that's done, I'm going to take the bolt for the motor pulley and the washer and slide the washer onto the bolt. Then I'm going to hand tighten it onto the motor shaft. Once it doesn't spin anymore, I'm going to hold the motor with my left hand and tighten it with my right hand and the 3mm Allen screwdriver. You can tighten this bolt fully so it doesn't move anymore. Gather the rear truck assembly, the motor mount assembly, the wrench, the 3mm Allen screwdriver, and the motor mount bag. We're going to mount the motor mount to the truck. So to get started, I'm going to put the truck face down with the wheel touching the desk, and then slide the motor mount onto the truck. You're going to need to make sure that the motor is facing the wheel and also opposite the side of the lock nut. I'll slide that onto the truck as shown, and you'll see that the wire comes in towards the base plate, as well as these two holes in the blue motor mount align with the two holes on the truck. If anything is wrong here, such as it's not lining up or it doesn't look exactly like it does here, you'll need to go back and remount the motor to the motor mount. It means that you did it in the wrong orientation. Once everything is aligned, I'm going to take one of the screws from the bag and slide it through the blue motor mount and into the truck. Holding it here, I'll grab the other screw and slide it into the opposite hole, making sure that everything is aligned and have it push through. I'll then hold each bolt with a finger and grab one of the lock nuts and thread it into the other side. Once that's hand tight, I'll grab the other lock nut and thread it into the other side. Once those are both hand tight, we can set the whole assembly down. Now we're going to use the Allen screwdriver and the wrench. We're going to hold the lock nut with the wrench on the side that says 7mm. Then we're going to use the 3mm Allen screwdriver to turn the head of the bolt. We're holding the lock nut with our left hand and the 7mm wrench so that it doesn't spin. You're going to tighten this bolt all the way until it cannot be tightened anymore. Once that's tight, we can do the same thing with the other bolt. So I'm just going to put the 7mm wrench down onto the lock nut and turn the bolt with the screwdriver. Once that's done, the motor mount is now attached to the truck. Gather the rear truck assembly, the wheel pulley, the belt, one wheel, the Allen screwdriver, and your T-tool. Remove the lock nut from the axle on the truck. You do this by either spinning it off with your hand or, if it's a little too tight, using the T-tool. Then you're going to remove the silver washers. You're going to make sure that there's only one remaining on the truck. So in this case, I took two off. You may only need to remove one. After double checking that there is still one silver washer on the axle, we're going to slide the wheel pulley onto the axle. Now place the belt over the wheel pulley. With the belt over the wheel pulley, we're going to put the wheel onto the axle. The same thing as before, use the Allen screwdriver to move the spacer in between the bearings if needed. Once that's down, we're going to install one of the silver washers back onto the axle, and then hand tighten the lock nut on the axle. Tighten everything down with the T-tool. Once it's completely tightened, loosen it about a quarter turn. Now it's time to install and tension the belt. So to get started, we're just going to pull the belt up over the wheel pulley and then push the motor all the way in as far as it'll go towards the base plate. Like that, you should be able to just pick up the belt and slide it over the motor pulley. Now we need to put tension on the belt and then secure the motor to the motor mount fully. So what I'm going to do is set this down, get my 3mm Allen screwdriver, and then I'm going to place my thumb on the back of the motor mount and my fingers on the opposite side of the motor. I can then apply tension back on the motor to tension the belt. While holding it in tension, I'm going to use the 3mm Allen screwdriver to tighten one of the bolts on the motor. Once you tighten the first bolt, it should keep the belt in tension. Now, tighten the 3 remaining screws that attach the motor to the motor mount. Now's a good time to talk about the tension on the belt. If the belt's too loose, it will skip and not propel you forward. And if it's too tight, it'll put a lot of unneeded tension on the motor. So as you can see right now, when I push and pinch on the belt, it moves a little bit, but not a lot. I'm going to loosen this bolt and move the motor towards the truck, and you'll see how loose that is. So with the motor all the way towards the truck, you'll see that this belt moves all the way down and how much it pinches. This is far too loose. If it's like this, you're going to need to loosen all 4 bolts and re-tension the belt. Then secure the first bolt and check your tension again. When you have a good belt tension, you can secure the other 3 bolts. Gather the assembled rear truck, the truck hardware bag, a red riser, one of the red clips, your 3mm Allen screwdriver, your T-tool, and your skateboard deck. Take 4 of the bolts out of the bag and slide them through the top of the skateboard deck, the side with the grip tape. So you're going to put the top of the head through the deck with the grip tape so it comes out the other side. Now we're going to place the red riser onto the skateboard deck. You'll see that one side is completely flat and the other has some raised parts. The flat side will go to the deck. Also, one side is curved and one side is concave, so you're going to put the curved side towards the back. You'll notice that there's only one set of holes on the bottom of the riser, while there are 2 on the top. If you align the bottom holes first to the bolts on the deck, it'll be easier to install. Now snap the red wire clip into the red riser. There's 2 sides to the wire clip, and the smaller side should go towards the back. When it's pushed all the way down, you'll see that the riser is now still completely flat. Now we're going to slide the rear truck assembly onto the riser. The easiest thing to do is to put the curved side and match the curved side on the riser. So I'm just going to hold one side and slide it over the bolts. With it held here, I'm going to take one of the lock nuts and thread it onto one of the bolts. After that, I'm going to hand tighten 3 more lock nuts onto the remaining 3 bolts. You may need to push the bolt head on the other side of the deck to make sure it sits all the way through. With all of those hand tightened, it's now time to secure the truck fully to the deck. Now is a good time to check that the motor mount is facing towards the center of the deck. If it's facing the back, you put the truck on the wrong way. Use the Allen screwdriver and the T-tool to tighten all 4 of the silver bolts. So I'm just sliding this end of the T-tool over the lock nut and then turning the Allen screwdriver to tighten the bolt. You'll then repeat this same process 4 times to tighten all 4 of the bolts. Gather the front truck assembly, the red riser, your remaining hardware, the 3mm Allen wrench, and the T-tool, as well as your deck. Now we're going to repeat the same process on the front to install the front truck. I'm going to prop the skateboard up and push the 4 bolts through the skateboard deck. Now I'll install the red riser and ensure that the flat part touches the skateboard deck and the rounded part faces the front of the skateboard. With that on, I'll place the front truck over the bolts. Now hand tighten all 4 of the lock nuts onto each of the bolts. With all 4 hand tight, you can use the screwdriver and the T-tool to completely tighten them just as you did before. And there you have it. We're almost there. Gather the 2 clear rails, the rail hardware bag, and the Allen screwdriver. We're going to install the rails on the skateboard deck, but first we need to remove the 2 screws from the sides on one of the rails. So I'm just going to use the Allen screwdriver and completely remove the screw from the rail entirely. You can put them back into the rail hardware bag for safekeeping. Place 2 of the rail screws through the backmost holes on the skateboard deck. Then place 1 white washer over each of the bolts. Take the rail that we removed the 2 screws from, and we're going to attach it to the skateboard deck. The part where the screws were removed from, you'll see that there's a little silver insert in there. It should face back. There are also 2 little knobs on the end. These should face the back. I'm going to take the Allen screwdriver and put it in the head of the bolt to get it started. Then put the rail onto the bolt and turn the bolt at the same time. Once it's started, I'm going to move the Allen screwdriver to the bottom bolt and repeat the process. With both of them started, I'm going to fully tighten each bolt. Now it's time to prepare the other rail. With this, we're not going to fully remove these 2 bolts. We're just going to loosen them to the point where they are not touching the inside of the rail. I'm going to loosen this about 70% of the way. It's still going to stay inside the threads, but it will not be visible at all on the inside of the rail. Repeat this process for the other side. Place 2 of the bolts through the next section of holes on the deck. Add a white washer to each of them. Now you're going to install the rail with the silver screws facing the back. I'm going to line this up the same way and put the Allen screwdriver in the bolt head. Get ready to turn it. I'm going to line it up and start threading it on just a little bit. Take the Allen screwdriver, put it on the bottom bolt, line everything up. Now I'll just tighten both screws fully. Flip the skateboard onto its back as shown and gather the ESC case. We're then going to slide it into the rail closest to the motor. I'm going to align the cable facing the back, and you're going to place this part of the case in between this part of the rail. You'll see it sits all the way down, and then you could push it towards the motor. The rail and the case are the exact same width, so the case should line up exactly with the rail. Gather the battery, and we're going to do the same thing. This time you don't have another rail to place it between though, so you're just going to align it to the back of this rail. Once everything is down, you slide it in towards the ESC. You then have to wiggle it just a little bit to get all of the pins to line up, and once it does, it will slide all the way in. You don't need to use too much force, just a little bit here. Make sure you don't force anything. Use the Allen screwdriver to fully tighten both of the screws on either side of the rail. It's really important to make sure that the battery is fully slid into the rail, because if you tighten the bolt now and it's not installed properly, you'll thread it into the plastic, which is what we do not want. So I'm just going to flip this up and we'll have easy access to the bolt. And you can see that the battery is flush with this side of the rail. Once you know that's good, you can tighten this bolt. Once that is fully tightened, you can flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. There should be almost no resistance on this bolt at all. If it's hard to go in, you're doing it improperly and things are not aligned. We're almost there, and now it's time to plug in the motor. On the motor cable itself, there's a little black arrow. It's a little bit difficult to see, but locate it right now on the motor side. Once you find it, you can then take the cable from the ESC and just rotate it around until you find the exact same arrow. You're then going to connect the cables and ensure that the arrows stay aligned the entire time. This is really important not to force, because if the arrows aren't aligned properly, you can't install the connector. So I just lined up the arrows and pushed it through. There's a flat spot on the motor side, and the connector comes almost up to that side. We're now going to snap the motor wire into the motor clip on the riser. So I'm just going to push it back, line everything up, and snap it in. Now it's time to install the LEDs. You're going to peel the blue backing off of the LED strip. Make sure that the white sticker stays on. And repeat the same process for the other side. Once both are off, you can kind of just tear them. Now connect the LEDs to the connector on the ESC. With it connected, you'll see that there's a left and a right cable. I'm just going to take the one closest to me, which is on the right side, and kind of tuck it around and install the LED. It should be parallel to the handle. grab the other LED and run it under the motor cable. Then you're just going to make sure it's parallel to the handle and just push it down firmly to make sure it stays in place. Now it's time to learn how to use your brand new Lectec electric skateboard. To get started, you can peel the red warning sticker off of the clear case towards the motor wire. To turn on the skateboard, you press the switch for about a second, and the switch is located near the motor cable but on the opposite side of the case. You press the switch for about 1 second and the light will turn on. In about 10 seconds, you'll notice that the lights turn on and are a white color. This is how you know that the ESC is ready to go. When the lights turn on, you can grab the remote and press and hold the on button until the light is illuminated at the bottom of the remote. When that comes on, release the on button. Give the remote a few seconds to pair, and if it doesn't, I'll show you how to do so. You can tell if the remote is paired by watching the Wi-Fi signal LED at the top of the remote. When it is paired, it will be solid, and when it's in the pairing process, it will blink. For now, this remote is not paired, so I'll go through the pairing process. The first step is to turn off the skateboard. So I'm just going to press and hold the power button for about 3 seconds, and then release it. You'll notice that the LED lights turn off right away. Take the remote and turn it off. So I'm going to press and hold the power button until the light turns off at the bottom. Now turn on the skateboard one more time. You press and hold the button for about a second and give it 10 seconds or so for the lights to turn on. Now it's time to use the remote. To apply power and move the motor, you can just push up on the wheel. If you notice that it makes a weird noise like this, or the motor doesn't spin, it could be one of two things. Either one, the battery isn't charged, in which you could tell the status of the charge by these 4 buttons here. As you can see, none of them are illuminated, so I know that the battery is very low on charge, and may be the reason that the motor isn't spinning. Charge the battery, and if the motor still doesn't spin, then you'll need to do a motor detection, which is available in a different tutorial. To charge the skateboard, get your battery charger, which looks like this. On one end, you'll find the connector for the battery. You can plug it in directly to the port here in the center. There is a groove on the pins so that you cannot install it the wrong way. If it doesn't fit into the connector, you're installing it wrong. You need to connect the charger to the battery before plugging it into the wall. After installing the connector to the battery, you can then take the skateboard to the outlet and plug it in. The charger has an indicator that is either red, which means it's charging, or green, which means it's finished charging. If it's blinking red, that means that the battery is completely dead, so it just needs some time to bring up the voltage to the point where it will turn solid, and then eventually green.